started. We're going to have a really fun meeting today. I am confident in us. So welcome to the November meeting of the Curriculum Committee of the School Board of the Lower Merion School District. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. It should be a very interesting one tonight because we don't have any contracts to go through. We just have two really cool presentations that we're going to get from some of our staff and admin here. First, I just want to let everybody know that this is the last CCOB meeting for the calendar year, not the school year, but there is no curriculum committee meeting in December because by state law, we have a reorganization meeting of the board on the first Monday evening in the month of December that follows a general election in an odd numbered year. Okay, and so that is to congratulate our newly elected board members and we will be saying goodbye to two of our members who have proudly served us for 4 years. And with that, I wanted to particularly thank Ms. Garrison for serving on this committee and her consistent work on our board for us throughout the years of your service. Okay, so that I believe, are we still doing an overview? So every time. Okay, so just for anybody who might be new or just needing a little refresher, this is the curriculum committee of the board. We touch on lots of different things in this committee. We'll talk about specifically things that are going to reach our kids in the classroom and things that are in their day-to-day parts of their instruction, how they're learning, what textbooks they're learning from, what curricular programs they're working with, and how those things intertwine with their experiences in the classroom and in their school life. So what we'll do, the way we structure these, is we will have our presentation, we'll have an opportunity for the board to ask questions, we'll open it up then for the community to ask questions first in person, and then if you have any questions you can submit if you're watching online through the chat feature, and Amy will get us read on those. We'll go presentation by presentation. So in the first section, if you have a question that specifically relates to the first presentation, we'll tackle those. And then if you have questions on the second presentation, we'll get to that next. Then we will have time at the end if you have a general curriculum-based question that you'd like to address to the board or the admin, we can deal with that. If they are more generally to the operation of the district, I will direct you that the best place to ask those questions is going to be next Monday night's business board meeting. This room, this time, just a week in the future. So, and I will urge my colleagues that if you don't actually have a question to ask, that you don't need to, we're going to try and not go overboard on questions tonight because we have two really in-depth presentations. Thank you, my friends. My tongue was not working all the way through. I was so close. Anyhow, now that I've gotten tongue-tied, we're going to go on to our first presentation, and that is building a balanced digital learning culture. And we have a lot of friendly faces, so take it away.
Thank you, Ms. Kalish, for the interview. Taking off from your presentation. Wait a minute. Here we go. Mic check. Yep. Welcome. I'm excited. There's two really good presentations tonight. The first one is building a balanced digital learning culture. I will open, and I'm really pleased to turn it over and work with colleagues that are instructional tech teacher leaders in our building. Jennifer Goldberg, who works with elementary school, Kimberly Phillips, who works with middle school, and Laura Hudemeyer, who works with our high schools. And then they work together to come up with district planning, especially in a topic like a balanced digital learning culture, which we will do first. After this presentation, as Ms. Kalish said, we'll stop for some questions. The second presentation this evening is on Universal Design for Learning, known in the educational world as UDL. Education likes a lot of initials, so UDL is Universal Design for Learning. And we also have really talented colleagues that came out tonight also to present for you after that presentation, and I will introduce them at that point, but I want to thank them for being here tonight. Building a balanced digital learning culture. This is a presentation we really wanted to do because this is something the community really cares about. We know that because at our ISC meetings, as we talk to parents and engage with families, we know that there's a partnership, and I'll go to the second slide, of school and home, and that's the foundation of what we try to do in our communities is, the line I like to use a lot is, we're with your children during the school year as much of their wake hours as families are. So they really entrust our schools in helping to raise healthy young people. One of the topics that's pivotal and people are thinking about internationally, and certainly here in Lower Merion, is the right amount of engaging with technology in schools. Where does it enhance learning? And then where is it too excessive? And where's that fine point? That's something we partner with families on. I see a community member who I know is going to speak out on a movement in the community about waiting till 8, and that in that area that we wrestle with raising children and screen time outside of our home. So this is one of those partnerships that we're in this together, and families certainly want to know what we're doing during the school year, and we want to share that really openly tonight. So I'd like to start and do that. One of the things I want to draw you back to, and I'm reluctant to do this, and in the education world, we're told more and more not to do this, but I'm going to bring you back to a time that wasn't the best time in schools and in our international area, certainly our country, was COVID. And being a high school principal during COVID, it was one of those things that was thrust upon us. Nobody asked for it. Most didn't realize it was coming. And on March 12th, 2020, our lives changed forever. And in thinking about how to lead schools during that time, there was a lot of opinions, but not a lot of expert advice. So as school leaders, we were seeking for experts in an area that was novel, that we haven't dealt with before. And I remember getting emails that were polar opposite at the time. Too much screen time. My kids are stressed. We need to do this better. Less screen time. The next email in one of the cases was, we need more time online with teachers. FaceTime on screens. Two really smart people that had something in common. They loved their children. They wanted best for them at a time where there was polarizing answers to the same questions. Similarly, now, we sent an email out recently on how we're thoughtfully introducing AI to young people. And we thought, since we were covering that topic, that may be a topic that's covered at home, we'd like to communicate about those things. So we did, and in back-to-back emails, we had teaching them how to use AI is unhealthy and harmful. And that went on about stealing intellectual property and the dangers of AI that we're well aware of and want to inform people the right way. And then the next email was, thank you so much for teaching them about AI. This is so important. Also more commentary in a world that's changing where they're going to need those skills. Again, two community members, intelligent people, love their children, think very differently about what we do. And the only thing that they had in common was the exclamation points at the end. Thank you. I'll pause and let people gather that. And there were a lot of exclamation points during that time, and there still is on certain topics that we deal with. So why do I name that? Because we recognize that people have opinions, want the best for their children, and look for schools often to do what they want. But when there's differences of opinions, what do you do to lead schools? Well, you try to follow research and experts, and you continually learn to continually make the good decisions for young people and take that guidance. I'm really fortunate. The people that I named earlier, the Jen, Kim, and Laura's, have a wealth of information. But what I'm most proud of that they do is they're reaching out to people all over the technology community, the IUs. We met with the CCIU today about a topic in technology. They were gathering feedback from all areas. People were partnering and getting the best practices. And we know this is going to constantly evolve. Similar to the concept of we didn't ask for COVID and it came upon us. November 30th, 2022, we didn't realize that ChatGPT was going to be released and it was going to fundamentally change in a lot of ways how we do our practice. English teachers had to go back into their classrooms the next day and figure that out. And we've been in that process of figuring it out. And we're committed to continuing to learn and figure that out. In the meantime, we have to give guidance, and we're doing that. I'm proud to work with Megan Schaefer and the policy committee on working with AI. This presentation isn't AI, even though I reference it multiple times. It's about technology usage in our schools, particularly a little bit around screen time, the thoughtful way that we're doing that. And one of the things I also know that I want to name it on the forefront, we recognize that, that families are asking, what does that look like? The way most of our brains work is this. When we don't know the story, we're not in school, so what's happening with my kids during the day when we're not there? We oftentimes will make up a story and fill it in with details that can make us really anxious. That's makes us normal. That's what we do. When we don't know, we fill in facts. That's how our brains work, and they're not always accurate ones. So what we'd like to do today is, as I walk around schools and our tech leaders are involved with teachers in schools and our principals, we do see what's happening in the classroom. I do feel really good about the professional balance that we have in introducing tech tools for the right reasons, which you're going to hear specifically about tonight. And when we're not on the right side of that, we expect feedback to correct. But I do think our typical, the way we run our schools, the balance of time that people are using applications, technology, I think we're on the right side of it. We're going to cover a little bit about cell phones in schools and how we operate. And we're going to present those things to you and be available for questions later. Without any more opening from me, I'm going to turn it over to Kimberly Phillips.
All right, so we're going to begin with our purpose and vision. And we emphasize purposeful technology that strengthens instruction and supports meaningful learning experiences for our students. And teachers are making intentional choices. They're deciding when it's most effective to use digital tools and times when it's not effective to use digital tools, and they choose those low and no tech options. And as we know that balance is so important, so we really want to protect our students' health, their sleep, and attention by really focusing on that moderation and balance. And again, with that purpose and vision statement, we found that our approach really aligns with expert guidance from many different organizations, one being the American Academy of Pediatrics. And their emphasis is really focusing on the purpose and quality of technology use versus looking specifically at screen time limits.
There were a few key points we wanted to emphasize from the research. The first one being not all screen time is equal. And that's something that is, I think, important to keep in mind when we think about ourselves as adults using technology. Reading an article online is very different than doom scrolling on a social media app. So when it comes to students and learning, that will look very different from classroom to classroom. There was a chemistry teacher that I got to work with last week who is using a simulation online to show students what the atom looks like. And that's something that's very hard to accomplish because it's very abstract. And so we wanted to just remind everyone of some of these uses of technology that are really not all equal. Another point is that active engagement supports learning, and I think we all know this, and our teachers strive and make decisions every day to incorporate active learning strategies. And you can see that in our classrooms through discussion-based learning, inquiry-based learning. You will see our students writing with paper and pencil, so that's not something that is gone. It's actually something that I think we're seeing more and more with some of the AI barriers that have come up. So there's a lot of active learning that's happening in our classrooms, and you'll even hear teachers advising students when, I need all screens closed. Okay, now you may have your screen open. So there's a lot of explicit instruction on when it's appropriate to have a screen out at all levels. And finally, that physical movement and human connection matter, and we know that students learn best when they can learn together.
So as Laura mentioned, there is a difference in screen time. When we look at the two different types of screen time, the American Academy of Pediatrics defines active and passive screen time. Active screen time engages critical thinking through creation, problem solving, design, collaboration, and interaction with others. Passive involves consuming content, without reflection, creativity, or participation. Doom scrolling, things like that, things where you're just consuming. Research indicates that active, purposeful digital work correlates with stronger engagement in student outcomes. We focus our attention here on the active use of technology.
One area we wanted to specifically highlight is how technology can support inclusion and access for our students. So classroom technology has the unique ability to help students with diverse needs access curriculum in flexible ways. So various tools like audiobook, voice to text, and even adaptive learning programs allow students flexible ways to access content. Some of the things that we'll hear about later with that universal design for learning, our technology is able to support students having multiple ways to engage with content as well as multiple ways to show their understanding through various technology tools. And our research shows that technology has the best and greatest impact when it can promote that active learning and promote those 21st century skills, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and creativity. And when we're seeing this and reflecting that active technology use, we're reducing barriers for our students, and we know what's good for some can be good for all, and that's something that's really helpful with the tools that we are using in our classrooms.
So when it comes to the efforts that we're making K-12 in the Lower Merion School District, there's several that we wanted to highlight tonight. The first one being that all of our online resources, including web pages, websites that a teacher may use, are curated and vetted. And that process is pretty extensive. So it is usually reviewed by our curriculum team, school administrators, the technology department, as well as our district solicitors before a product is deemed approved for student use. Additionally, we also have the K-12 off and away guidance, which we'll tell you more about what that looks like at each level in just a moment. We have our digital citizenship programming, which is really something that's been around since one-to-one devices have come about in the district. So you might have heard recently about the Digital Citizenship Week that just happened, but that's really just a small part of our programming that happens each year throughout the year. And finally, we also plan and provide professional development to our teachers that not only includes practical low and no tech strategies, but also models it as well to enhance student-centered learning experiences.
So at the elementary level, our kindergarten and first grade students use iPads to support their learning. At this level, students engage with apps that support individual needs, provide immediate feedback, and allow for creative expression. The apps are chosen by the curriculum specialists, the curriculum supervisors. They are vetted, and each grade level has a different set of apps that support their specific learning needs. Apps are used in short periods of time, typically no more than about 15 minutes, because children's attention spans aren't much longer than that to begin with. Students in grades 2 through 4 use Chromebooks to support their learning. And at this level, students use digital devices to reinforce concepts, assess understanding, learn new things, and create. I want to highlight at the elementary level some of the specific instruction taking place regarding digital citizenship. The first thing I want to highlight is our Digital Citizenship Week, which happens the third week of October, so it just passed very recently. This year featured new lessons from Common Sense Media that were delivered by all homeroom teachers across the district and elementary schools, and they were tailored to each grade level, which was new this year. In the past, we had the same lesson for different grade bands, but this year each grade level had specific lessons. The lessons were rich with discussion and conversation and very little tech involved in the lesson. Sometimes there was a slide deck, but typically the lesson involved discussions and conversations around the topics that you can see listed. In addition to this special week of focus discussions, students receive digital literacy and well-being lessons delivered by their school librarians. These newly revised lessons blend picture books with materials from Common Sense Media to reinforce concepts. So the librarians design the lessons, and they usually take a picture book from their collection that supports the concept. Then they teach the skill through the picture book and then through additional materials from Common Sense Media. All grade levels, K to 4, receive at least 3 scaffolded lessons per year.
So at the secondary level, students in grades 5 to 7 have Chromebooks, and grades 8 to 12 have MacBooks. And one of the ways that Off and Away is taking shape in the secondary schools is, I mean, it's been around for several years now, but this year in particular, it's really ramped up in all secondary buildings. And at the middle school level, you will see students placing their phones either in a locker or a backpack or cubby, and high school students placing them in a class phone caddy at the start of each set and collecting it at the end. And that's really based on the research that's shown that having your device on your person, on your body, is, can be very distracting. And so helping to remove that distraction for students is part of our priorities this year. And that's for mobile devices.
And just as you heard from Jen, at the secondary level, our students are also receiving targeted instruction through our digital citizenship programming. One of those pieces is about digital media balance. So Laura and I curate the secondary digital citizenship curriculum. We do use Common Sense Media as a source that we adapt, and we have those lessons as whole school lessons for our secondary students. As an additional layer at the middle school level, our students have computer classes where they also receive digital citizenship as part of their curriculum. And we also celebrated Digital Citizenship Week, where we did announcements each day for our students during that week. And some of the topics focused on digital wellness, thinking critically about AI, positive online conduct, media literacy, and protecting their privacy. And lastly, we started the school year off with our very first digital citizenship lesson this year, introducing our AI policy to students and thinking about responsible student use in the age of AI. So that was our first lesson for this school year as part of our programming.
We have some additional resources that are available at all times. We do have a digital citizenship webpage on the district website. It's on the Parents tab, and it's called Digital Citizenship. We keep that as current as possible. In fact, I literally updated it this morning because over the weekend I read about a new alternative to a smartphone product that I had seen they were advertising as a holiday sale, and I thought, oh, I didn't hear about this product, so I added it this morning on the digital citizenship page. So there's a lot of resources on that page. There's a lot of smartphone alternatives or other tracking devices for families who don't want to use a smartphone with their child. There's books and activities you can do with your child. There's lots of resources on that page. I maintain that myself. And then we have 2 newsletters that come out. There's the Tech It Out newsletter, which is for families with elementary school age children. You can also find that on the Digital Citizenship webpage as well. And then my secondary counterparts put together the Secondary Technology newsletter, which comes out throughout the year. It also is filled with resources and tips for families. And then we also reference Common Sense Media a lot since we do use their materials. They have a fabulous parent section as well. So as much as we use the educator section, we use that as a reference for families as well, because there's great resources where you can get recommendations, guidance, and other materials that might help as a family from Common Sense Media. So we've linked all of these resources for you as well. That concludes our presentation on building a balanced digital learning culture.
Thank you so much. That was a really, really comprehensive presentation. I know that we gave you a very large topic, and it is also your wheelhouse, and you gave us the broad picture and drilled down in a very concise manner, and I appreciate that. That was fantastic. Just for anybody who's at home looking at these, I know these links work because I just accidentally clicked one with the side of my hand. They all do. So if you would like to get any of these resources that were discussed in this presentation, you can go through either to the LMSD website, and that is lmsd.org/parent/safety, and that'll give you the digital citizenship website. But also, if you go onto Board Docs and you click through to this presentation, the last page of the presentation has all these links. They're all clickable. With that said, do any of my colleagues have questions? I don't know if Abby in the waiting room? I have heard things. Our fourth committee person is not here this evening, but she pre-sent some questions. Ms. Garrison, why don't you start us off?
Thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation. I was curious, particularly about, I guess, how did you phrase it, active learning. How much, does that include like handwriting?
I'm sorry.
Does active learning, is that including handwriting?
Yes, active learning could include handwriting if you're using the iPad to trace letters, which we do have apps that do trace letters. So yes, that would be considered active learning because you are tracing, and the apps that we have give you feedback. So if you trace it incorrectly, if you start at the bottom instead of the top, you'll get the feedback. So that's active learning, yes.
Do we also do pencil and paper as well?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Handwriting is done in multiple tiers. Kids need a lot of variety. Oftentimes they'll skywrite, so they'll just write in the air. Sometimes they'll write on the board in front of the room. They'll write with paper and pencil, and then they use the app. But like I said, the advantage of the app is that it does give the student immediate feedback, whereas if they're writing with paper and pencil, they don't get that. But we have an absolute mix of it because students don't learn in one modality.
Right. Okay, that's great. And my other question, out of curiosity, I was wondering, are digital books available like for Kindle use by our students from, K through 12? Is that something, can they do that as well through the library?
Yes, our students have access to Mac and Via, which is connected to our Destiny library system.
Okay.
So yes, they can, and they're actually instructed through their librarians how to use it. They can use it on their Chromebooks, they can use it on the iPad, whichever device they have, and they can even access it at home as well. But they absolutely can access digital titles through our services, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mine's fast. So elementary, they're mostly in the same classroom with the same teacher, so you get a bigger scope of how much time the little ones are online. And then, in high school kids, there will be high school kids, and you have the system set up. I guess I'm wondering, do we have an average accumulation of time for the middle school kids? Because they're seeing different people for every period. And again, it's going to be different every day, but in general, how do you keep an eye on it when you know they're going to different classrooms?
Last year we had, it was someone that came from an ISC meeting that was really interested in the topic and was pushing how much are they using, how much are they using it. So we, at one point, worked with Bob Catalano, our information systems director, and randomized middle school Chromebooks and took a subset of people and ran the numbers, and they averaged around hour and 50-something minutes, but it fluctuated from when they did it. Some people were over that, some people were under, but I was amazed at how close the norm was. One of the things you would think is, can we control that? And an area that I can show you that's similar to that is like a high school testing schedule. There's so many variations of classes that kids may have, it's really hard to control and say you can do this or you can't do that. So you hope that the average ends up being in the right spot, and every once in a while a kid may have 3 tests in a day, and it's not preventable. So similarly with that, to control that would be really hard to govern because of the variation. But we were pushed to look at this a little bit more, so we took that up, and it ended up under 2 hours a day.
And how many, just for everybody's understanding, out of how many hours in a day for the students?
So the students were able to take their laptops home, so I don't think it was, I think it might have even vetted.
Oh, that includes at night?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's slightly creepy, but cool. I'm just going to say that. That you measured it, and that's a pretty impressive number to look at it. So good, because I think that sometimes the question, what happens, to your point earlier, that sometimes you'll spiral the worst case scenario in your head, and knowing that we can kind of take a dipstick test and say how much is in there or how much are they going to it for a middle school, I think is important. I also do know that it's about having desired desired activities and engagement and relationships that will turn you away from your phone and into engaging with other people one-on-one. So I'm not a big fan of taking it away makes it better. I think it just makes kids creative. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that I appreciate that the district proactively made efforts to randomize that and keep student data private while measuring that, because, I mean, that's an easy thing to not think about proactively doing when you're looking at that kind of data. And so I just want to say, I appreciate that. I mean, there's a balance between wanting the data and then respecting privacy, and I just wanted to recognize that I see you all proactively doing that. Anna, did you want to chime in?
Hi, Scott's giving me that look. It's okay. I'm just curious, Scott. I'm just curious. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you for everyone being here. And just to underscore Curry's point for listening, it's not 2 hours sitting, which I know, but just anyone out there, it's from each class is what I would say. I'm just curious about how you're approaching training for teachers. Tech is changing so quickly, and often our students are ahead of us. So wondering about how you're thinking about professional development for our educators and administrators.
Recently, we did a professional development challenge for educational technology focus. And we offered teachers a choice board, which I think you're going to hear about in the next presentation, choice boards. And one column had 3 options that were 0 technology included, and then 3 options that had technology included. And so we're trying to be really strategic and thoughtful about giving teachers those options and modeling that for our staff, so that they're starting to, also be thoughtful if they're going to do a choice board, having some low tech, no tech options. I mean, going back to like making the posters and the trifolds from, yesteryear. And I think that's something that we're starting to see come back more as AI is created new barriers for showing what you know. So I think that's one of the most recent examples we've done. Did you want to add on to that? Okay.
One of the things that I can say that we all have in common is that we're all in the schools. And so being in the schools gives us the advantage to seeing the teachers, seeing what's happening, and being available as a resource. I split my time among 6 schools, so obviously I'm not there every single day, not even every week, because there's only 5 days in the week. But I do get there as often as I can. One of the things that I do to make sure teachers are informed, as I run a teacher newsletter, similar to the family newsletter, it's called the Bits and Bytes newsletter. I try to keep that as current as I possibly can. You like my clever names.
Every time you say it, I like it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And this, I will tell you, is before ChatGPT. I came up with this on my own.
Yeah, proof that technology does not kill creativity.
See, I didn't need it for that. But at any rate, so the newsletter is there. Anytime I come up with something new, I read, I see, I will put it on the newsletter. I keep seasonal information. So as we're looking into, November, I put whatever month we're celebrating. If there's a specific heritage month, I put resources for staff. I put all of my AI work and things like that. So I try to make sure that staff have a place to go in the absence of me being physically in their building. They have a direct place that they can go. And then when I am in their building, I make a point of trying to eat lunch with them. I try to meet with them when they're meeting as a team so that I can be a resource in addition to just having something they can check out.
I just want to add, they're being humbled. I've seen Jen do presentations in elementary school and parents stay, and it's a topic that people want to learn about and navigate for their children. Laura and Kim are hosting for the entire region at Flux Space in Norristown, an AI summit. It's sold out in days, and there's people on the waiting list. So these are people that are leaders that other people are looking to that are in our name. So I'm proud of them and just wanted to add to that.
Yes, you all should have led with that. Like I'm
One other thing that we're doing, since we actually have some time now that, the schedules have changed at the middle school and, high school level. There's a cushion of time in the morning where teachers are coming in before the students arrive. And we've been doing pop-ups each month. We have a new topic and teachers can come and learn, and they're just bite-sized pieces that they can take something new and turn it around the next day, because that's always the best type of professional development, something that you're like, okay, I can envision how I'm going to use this. And that's been something that's been really successful to increase our reach to our teachers.
Awesome. Maybe not for this minute, but I would just be curious what professional development you all feel could be beneficial to continuing to lead teachers and other opportunities. There's so many right now, and there's really great ones. And so on top of you all doing it, what else do you need to stay on the front edge is something I'd be curious about. As you think, I don't want to derail your meeting, but I know we are also working on integrating curriculum and policy, so maybe not for this meeting, but I would be curious about your thoughts, and you've shared before in the policy meeting about the AI policy, how it can support your curriculum and curricular objectives in professional development in order to be aligned and advance our work together. So maybe we could do a deeper diver at some other time, Shayna.
No, that sounds perfect. I love these are the food for thought. We're moving towards a common goal. We're working cross-committee. This is great. Is that your checklist? You good?
Yes, I'm fine for now.
Fantastic. Okay,
Scott, I was fine.
I'm gonna jump in quickly because Abby sent a bunch of questions, and I'm gonna I'm gonna send her whole email to you, Scott, because, oh, you do? Okay, because some of them are suggestions rather than questions. The one that I wanted to, there was three, but I think can be sort of condensed into a two-parter, is a discussion of how the district provides and receives informed consent or denial of consent for absent programs for students under age 13, and how we handle absent programs that share student data and ones that share student data for profit, and does the district get any money if somebody's making money off of student data? Okay, let's start with the first one. How do we deal with consent option, opting in, opting out for parents using applications
Sure.
for kids under age 13?
Annually, we, in the beginning of the year, send it through PowerSchool, and there's a opt-in, opt-out for anybody under 13 where opt-in and opt-out is relevant. So that's sent home annually. And all of those things that are on there that are vetted is, and I think Jen said at one point, through legal, and they're vetted before they get on that COPA form where parents opt in and opt out, and that's sent out at the beginning of every year.
Okay, I think Abby may have more detailed questions about that, but I think that'll suffice for now. And the other is how we handle absent programs that may share student data, and do any of them share that? Like, are they making money off of our student data, and how we handle that, and do we get any money back from that? I don't think, let me clarify, I don't think she's advocating that we should make money from that. I think she's inquiring if that is a motivator for something.
So if you've been around for a while, and you have, Shayna, you know that we value student data privacy. That's really important. So when we say goes through legal, that's the main thing they look for, is that we're not sharing student data. So we don't, and we certainly do not profit from it if that was a suggestion.
Good. That, I think, covers the large part of that. I'll get my questions while you're doing this. We were talking about handwriting. Do the little kids ever use a stylus for handwriting, or is that just like a recipe to get lost and we wouldn't do that?
Over the years of using iPads, we have used stylus. The thing about a stylus is it has a very soft tip.
And they get destroyed.
Soft tip is not similar to a pen or pencil or anything else that they would use. So we have found that it doesn't actually help. And the handwriting, the grip that you would use for a stylus is different than the grip you would use on a pen or pencil. So we have found that it doesn't make a difference. These also break very easily. This little rubber tip is the easiest thing for a 5-year-old to break. So we went through lots and lots of them. So we have not found that there's a need for it. Kids do practice, and the bottom line, when they're practicing, they're not really trying to make the letter, because obviously they're going to write with a pencil. But what they're trying to do is understand the formation, the biggest thing being the letter start at the top. And, you know, if you're making a P, then you have to start from the top to go into the center, making sure they understand the formation, not necessarily the physical movement, because the physical movement they will get through paper and pencil.
Yeah, and all the foundations lines with the pretty, the earthworm and the airplane and the, yes, okay. So yes, it all works together. That makes a lot of sense. We're talking about, I was interested when you were talking about the digital citizenship lessons for the high school students. I know the middle school kids would probably get it in their INE and the little guys would get it from their library special. Where do the high school kids receive that instruction?
They have their lessons during advisory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I love short answers. Okay. All right. So my last question was for, are any of the students, especially the really little ones, ever in a situation where they have free time on their devices, and how is that sort of monitored and guided? Because I know there's been some concern about like the number of apps that might be on there and a kid having time to use an app that they perhaps were not instructed to or has not been scaffolded, and the sort of wonkiness of that free time.
Sure, that's a great question, and honestly, that's probably the question I get asked most frequently when talking about iPads with small children. The biggest thing to know is that all of the apps are there for a purpose. There isn't YouTube, so nobody's watching cat videos in their free time because we don't have YouTube. There's no ability to get there. If they are using it for free time, they're playing reading games, they're playing math games. Often what we have found is when kids have free time, they go to Raz Kids and read stories. They actually use it for things that we would probably use in instructional time, but there isn't a waste of time game. Angry Birds isn't on there. They're not going to be playing or clicking without doing something that's going to teach them something and give them reinforcement. So if there is free time, and I can't speak for every classroom, some teachers may give a short period of time and limit these 5 apps are available if you want to have some time to use them. But they're all educational apps, so they're practicing phonics skills, they're playing a math game, they're reading stories. They're not doing anything that is, you know, they're not scrolling through Instagram. It's just not available. So everything that's on there, and it does, I do get the comment a lot, it looks like there's a lot of apps. The apps are very targeted. So I have one app that works on rhyming words. I have one app that works on short vowel sounds. So they're only used during the time when we're studying rhyming words. So it might be used for 2-3 weeks while we're studying that. Maybe a kid wants to practice it in their free time, but it's not something that's going to be used all the time. So a lot of the apps are very specific to specific areas. There's an app that just does graphing. So when a student wants to research what's your favorite ice cream flavor, and they create a graph, and they can turn it from a bar graph to a pictograph to a pie graph instantly on their iPad. But they only use it when they're studying graphing. So there aren't apps, it looks like a lot, but it's not like they're using them all the time. They're using them for specific target areas of the curriculum.
I appreciate that clarity because I know that's a conversation we've had a lot. And Sarah, I know you have a lot of thoughts, so I'll let you go to it.
In reference to these apps, are they accessible to parents who might want to have them on their phone, especially with the little ones who are learning, you know, phonics and things like that? Are some of those apps available and parents could download them on their phone?
So absolutely, parents can ask their child's teacher for the list of apps. I have them all. I can certainly provide a list of apps. The thing about the iPad is that the apps, the work that the student does lives locally on the iPad.
Okay.
So if a student plays the game at school and they get to level 6 and they come home and you have it on your phone, they're going to start at level 1.
I see.
And their data won't move back and forth, which is fine. But yes, if you're interested to see what apps are there, absolutely. Just know that the app doesn't sync with anything unless you're looking at one of the web-based products like Raz Kids, Dreambox, what else? There's like 4 of them. But other than those products, any other app, everything lives locally on the device. But if you're interested in, you know, you want them to practice more, sure, they certainly can practice more at home. Yeah,
Terrific.
and that can be provided.
I would like to see that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Agreed with that one. Speaking about the apps that are only used for those short periods of time, is there a way on the devices to lock those apps when they're not being used so that kids aren't randomly clicking on them at other times?
That's a great question. And I've worked with our technicians to see what we can and can't do. One of the things that we actually have been working on this year, and I've been really focusing on, is trying to get rid of apps that kind of have to be there, but we don't need them to be on the display. Like we have our own, web filtering app that has to be on there, and Apple pre-installs all of its apps, iMovie and Maps and News and all of those. So we've hidden anything that is hideable, and we're trying to get rid of things that we don't need. If we're not going to use the News app, which we wouldn't, we just get rid of that. Anything we might need, we're trying to hide. The other thing that we're looking to do is put folders together so that we can organize the apps a little bit to make it a little bit cleaner. To be honest with you though, kids don't generally have a hard time finding the apps because they're graphics. If you look for the ladybug, they find the ladybug. They really don't have a hard time finding it. I find that adults swipe through and don't know where it is or get frustrated, but kids, they find the ladybug, they know where the ladybug lives. It's not a problem, but we are looking to do folders. The challenge with folders is it's across the board. So if first grade had the same folders, every first grade class in the district would have to have the same folders. Apps are pushed out in sets of grade level bands. So all of kindergarten has the same apps. All of first grade have the same apps. The other thing about folders is now we have a word at the bottom. So we talked about putting an emoji in front of it. So if it's a math thing, we put a little calculator or something, but it does make it a little bit harder to find the app. We're not looking for the ladybug now, we're looking for the word math. So that's another trade-off that we've talked about. But I've been meeting with the first grade and kindergarten teachers. I met with them most recently on October 31st to get feedback from them and see if we can come up with a common set of folders to make it a little bit easier for students to find it. But like I said, I really don't find that even though they may have to swipe, there's no more than 3 screens, and there is a dock. The dock is customizable. So kindergarten has all of the same apps. So this morning I was teaching kindergarten how to use Dreambox. Everybody knew where to find it because it's in the dock. It's at the bottom. It's the green and blue D, and nobody had a hard time finding it.
Great. I know last year my son was in first grade, and when his iPad came home, when the potential snow day was the first time that we saw it, and there were lots and lots of apps on it. And I could see how for a student that has trouble focusing in school, that could be an issue for them, just knowing to go to the right ones and not getting distracted by the ones that they're not supposed to go to. Off and away. I know we often talk about off and away, and we mention it as a policy sometimes we don't. And I guess this is more a question for policy committee. Is that a request that this could be potentially looked at in the committee? I think there was something that was on the agenda, but then was not on the agenda this past month, but maybe to formally put something in place for that. And does off and away include smartwatches too, or just cell phones?
It does include smartwatches. We typically see the smartwatches at the elementary level, I think more so, because we don't typically see phones very often, but we do see smartwatches, and it does include that, and students would be asked to put a smartwatch in their backpack for the course of the day.
Great.
Want me to respond to the policy question? Sure. Oh, so AI was on the docket and we moved it off. I think what I would say, Sarah, is often the way is exactly what Scott referenced at the top. For as many people that want it to be reviewed and take another look, there's as many people that are hard advocating the other side. So as we put in place process and procedure for how policies are reviewed and board members can request that, happy to loop back and share that process with you.
Great. For those apps or programs that do have the family-facing side, what is the best way for parents to get that information? Like either the student's login or information for the family login to be able to see your child's progress?
Are you asking to see a child's progress in the apps and websites?
Yeah, so I know Dreambox, there's a family-facing side to it that you can have a family login. You can log in and see your child's progress in that app. Which was actually a really good thing because my 4-year-old was playing on my son's and we didn't realize that was affecting his progress at all until, I checked it and I was like, oh, wait, you're really not at kindergarten level. Like, we gotta work on this. But how do parents get that information generally? I think I requested it from the teacher, but is it generally sent out to everyone?
So that's a great question. Typically, it is not sent out or even necessarily shared outside of perhaps a conference time. Teachers use the app the way they would use any other data that comes in. So a student colors a worksheet, a student does an activity or project, the teacher would use that data to inform their instruction, to inform maybe small groups or what skills the student needs to work on, but typically that data is not shared. The one product that you might be able to get data from would be RazKids, would be one that you could talk to your child's teacher about. RazKids would share data, and there is a parent login for RazKids. Dreambox, you already mentioned, also has the parent login. The only other one that's web-based at the elementary level is Keyboarding Without Tears. Keyboarding Without Tears does have a small piece of data, and you could ask your child's teacher for it, but to be totally honest, I don't know how useful that would be to you, how well your kid is moving through the keyboarding program. I mean, if that's important and you want to know that, you can certainly ask your child's teacher for that information, but their data isn't the most, in my humble opinion, it's not the most useful thing to help me guide my child's education, but it is available. But those are the only products that I would expect the teacher would have data that would be shareable to a family. The rest of it would just be used to inform instruction.
Okay. And then speaking about keyboarding, I know at the middle school level, there is computer classes, there's direct instruction in keyboarding. Is there direct instruction besides going on Keyboarding Without Tears, typing.com? Is there that direct instruction at the elementary level?
So there is not direct instruction specifically other than how to use the app. With keyboarding is relatively new. Keyboarding Without Tears is relatively new with kindergarten and first grade. So I have been going into first grade classrooms this year and teaching kids how to use the app. The app actually forces kids to use two hands, and it forces the kid to put one finger down while typing with the other hand and holding this finger down, which if you haven't seen this, you should watch a 6-year-old try to do this, because they have to hold one finger down and then type with their other hand. And it's a really good fine motor practice when we talk about like playing baseball and you go to the batting cage, and we talk a lot about that. So I do teach the kids a little bit about that beforehand. The program itself does talk about it, and it does show them which fingers they're supposed to use. We do have touch screens in 2nd through 4th grade, so that's always a challenge of telling the kids you can't use the touch screen. They should know that they have to use the keyboard for it. In 2nd through 4th grade, they use a website called typing.com. And the reason we have two different products is just simply because keyboarding has an app, works nicely on the iPad. Typing.com does not have an app, so it works nicely on a Chromebook. So based on the device. And actually, I like having two different products because then the kids don't use the same thing for 4 years and sort of tire of it. So it works nicely that they have sort of the primary interface and they have a more intermediate interface to use.
Great. And is that instruction also to support for now that the PSSAs are all online, making sure that the students are comfortable enough with their keyboarding skills when it comes time for the state testing?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. And besides knowing how to keyboard, we wouldn't want somebody's first experience being in 3rd grade during the PSSAs, trying to figure out a keyboard while taking a high-stakes test with a lot of rigor. So that is correct.
Great. And then similarly for email, I know students at the elementary level do have access somewhat to email. Is there direct instruction in how to appropriately send emails, email etiquette, things of that nature at the elementary level?
So at the elementary level, K through 2, they do have email. They probably don't know it, especially on an iPad, because there's no email app. So there would be no way for a student to access it unless they went to their Gmail on a computer at home. First graders and kindergartners aren't going to do that, but they do technically have a Gmail address. The reason we have that is because teachers do occasionally need to send something to students. We learned this with COVID, and we learned this even through virtual snow days, that if there's a Zoom link that needs to be sent out, it's efficient to send it to the students, and the student would then have that email link as opposed to trying to send it to all the parents and assuming that the parent would get it on a different device. Because the parent might get it on their phone, but the student needs it on their iPad, so it wouldn't necessarily help them. So we do have email for kindergarten through 2nd grade, but the only people they can email are staff. They cannot email students, they can only email staff. I have yet to see a kindergarten or first grader send an email to staff, but maybe it'll happen. We do have email in grades 3 and 4. That is within the LMSD domain, so they can email other students, but they cannot email outside of LMSD. They can't email their parents. Likewise, they can't get email in from outside, so they can't get parent emails coming in. And in that case, we do have etiquette. I have it posted on the Bits and Bytes newsletter, and teachers do talk to their kids about it to make sure that they know how to email. But to be honest with you, they don't use it very much at the elementary level. It's really meant as just a tool if a teacher needs to share something quickly with all of their students, and they just have a list from PowerSchool, they push one button. It's an efficient way to share something, but that's typically what it's used for at the elementary level.
Just two more. Question more so at the elementary level, but I guess also at middle and high school, involved with opting out of devices. If a family does not want their child to have a device, how is that handled?
We haven't had too many requests like that. We've had a couple. What we would do is, we're not going to guarantee the same learning experience. The reason we use technology is because it personalizes learning and enriches the experience, or we wouldn't use it. We won't force a kid to get on a computer if their family doesn't want that. We work with families. We will do the best we can to supplement learning. We can't guarantee the same enriched experiences if we use technology.
Thanks. And then, here's my last question. Here. One quick question regarding Seesaw, because I know we recently sent out an email about inclement weather, things like that. It says on our website that you can view the weekly plans in Seesaw. Are those every week for the school year, or just there's a plan put up when we think we're going to have an inclement day? Do parents just click on Seesaw and then click set up an account, and that's how elementary parents get an account on Seesaw for their children to access on inclement days? How does that work?
That's a great question, too. So teachers typically send out their weekly plans on a weekly basis, regardless of weather. Oftentimes, teachers prefer to email it rather than put it in Seesaw because it's easier to send it to you and you have it as opposed to expecting you to go find it somewhere else. So oftentimes, teachers will just send their weekly plans just via email to staff, or to families rather. If you want to sign up for a Seesaw account, you can certainly ask your child's teacher. Every parent does have the ability. It's called Family Access. It's turned on by default for all of our K-4 students. You can simply ask your teacher, your child's teacher, and they can send you just need a code to link you to the kid. Once you have an account, it follows your student. So if you create an account in kindergarten, you don't have to make a new one every year. It'll automatically update with your new student's teacher, and you'll be able to see whatever's posted in your student's journal. And if a teacher does post their weekly plan in there, you would see it, but you would have to go find it. So most teachers do prefer to just send it out so that they don't worry that families aren't going to see the content, rather than relying on going to Seesaw to look for it.
So for those potential inclement weather days, would you suggest that parents reach out to teachers like this time of year to get their login set up? Do teachers use Seesaw as the learning platform on those days?
It's pretty standard across the school for when inclement weather happens that each teacher emails. Yeah, I mean, if it's standard, could you just, Scott, maybe do the standard practice of we reach out? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would assume that teachers would be most definitely emailing out, because email is so much faster because, it comes right to you, you would see it. I think teachers would definitely email that out. I mean, you certainly can use Seesaw, and Seesaw is a great place to post like a Zoom link because it just sits there static. But as far as like, we're going to have this schedule, here's where you're going to need to be, a teacher would definitely email that out.
Okay, so parents don't need to set up an account for
They don't need a
inclement
Seesaw
weather?
account. They're welcome to have it. They definitely don't need a Seesaw account.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have any questions from any community members in the audience that would like to, okay, if you have a question, you can come right on up. Do we need to do a sign up for this?
We got
No?
one.
We don't usually do sign up for this one, do we?
Yeah, sometimes.
We do? Go ahead, say your first and last name and what town you reside in the district, and we'll try to keep it about 3 minutes-ish.
Sure. John Bellis from Wynwood. Sorry, this is my first CC meeting. I've never been to one of these. I didn't know I would be speaking, so I'm probably going to ramble for 2 or 3 minutes, hopefully make a few points here, and then kick me off. First, I just want to thank you guys for this kind of a meeting. It's really great to see how much effort goes into these things, which I know a lot of community members are concerned about. I think it's important to make a distinction between the really difficult questions you guys are trying to answer as to which apps and how much technology is too much and not enough inside the classroom, and then the really low-hanging fruit, which is, you know, what we've all seen over the last 10 years that created the anxious generation of kids. And by that, I'm talking about the social media, the doom scrolling, the third graders with, you know, iPhones and they can't get off TikTok. That's the low-hanging fruit that I've been after for the last year. I've been coming to these meetings to promote Wait Until 8th, which is, you know, waiting till 8th grade to give your child a smartphone or social media. And I think the power of it is, I mean, there's really smart people on all sides of the debate talking about what you guys are dealing with here as to all these questions you're asking, which are all very smart, and I don't have the answers to them. But I have yet to meet a parent that said, I think my, you know, third or fourth or fifth or sixth grader should have more social media, and I wish he would just scroll a little longer on that phone. Like, nobody thinks that, right? And because of that conclusion, it just occurred to me that this Wait Until 8th thing is like the perfect vehicle, because you're not forcing it on anybody. It's not a rule that every teacher or parent has to follow. It's simply a choice that parents can make to help each other make sure their child is not the only one in the room who's not on Snapchat, right? And because it works like that, I just think it's a perfect vehicle that I would really love to see the school board and the district and the teachers get behind. Now, last year, I think in part because of my efforts and some of my friends and colleagues that are making these points as well, the HSA leadership has started promoting this message. So I know at my school, the HSA puts a note in the newsletter every single week. I know you guys mentioned Wait Until 8th in your newsletter last week or 2 weeks ago. I asked myself, why does the Digital Citizenship Week not send a message out to the parents to talk about this? You're talking about common sense media, talking about parental controls. You know, nobody's complaining, why are you talking about this? You know, there's no backlash, right? Because you're not pushing or anything. You're just saying, hey, parents, if you want to look at common sense media, there's some good resources here. So to me, that goes right along with this. It's not the board endorsing something that, you know, I understand you guys can't endorse every good idea that comes in this room. That's just not what you guys do as board members. That makes sense to me. But I think you can at least help us let parents know that this is out there. We have hundreds of parents in the district that have signed this pledge. And I just think it's a no-brainer that in a number of years, if we can get to a spot where, you know, 30, 40, 60% of 7th graders are not on social media, that'd be a totally different world.
So I wanted to say that I appreciate your coming at it from a perspective. I know it's been a discussion on the board of ways that we can partner with the parents, and so that we can have policies that come from the school to the student, and that it's really helpful when we have families that come from home to work together. So I think that that's just totally, it's two sides of the same coin, both working at the same project, and I'm happy to have you in our various and sundry newsletters. So.
Can I make one more point about the off and away? I just realized that it's a guideline, it's not a rule, and it's not a policy. So that's an issue.
Yes, that has to do with the
teachers, right? It's up to the
technicality
teacher.
of board policy, yeah.
Yeah, so I would ask the board to consider changing that. I would also think that, like you said, these things are changing so fast. So this rule was just, or this policy guideline was 2 or 3 years old. Maybe we need to revisit it every 12 months to say, like, you know, things are changing. The pendulum is swinging here, for sure.
Thank you.
I think that's right. I want to make two comments really quick. The policy, that's why if there is a policy and when we review policy about cell phone, that is separate and distinct from the administrative regulations, which would allow us to pivot, admin to pivot as quickly as possible, and it's two different pieces.
Gotcha.
I want to lift out something that you said, actually, because it's the same message you've been saying since you talked about this, which is not the same message that everyone that is saying they're in your movement is sending. That the I'm forgetting. Wait Till 8 is not having social media or
Right.
devices. It is not banning cell phones in schools or not having cell phones till post 8,
Right.
which I'm just articulating this because that's the message you've always said. And in the community, I feel like that message is getting a little bit varied and extrapolated away
Yeah.
from what the movement actually is. And so look forward to continuing to collaborate, but I think the more we can all anchor in what the movement is actually about,
Right.
it would help us get to a more collaborative solution more quickly versus our other perspectives and opinions coming
Yeah, I
in.
appreciate that. You know,
Yeah.
my son has a smartwatch, and the dumb phones are fine.
Yeah.
It's the social media.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else from the community? Come on up. Brett, you can sign in, say your first and last name, and where you reside in the district. Just a town is fine.
Good evening. I wrote something to you.
Sorry, can you just say your first and last name and where you reside?
Julia Jeter, and I live in Bryn Mawr. I wrote something to you when you did your presentation on AI and digital skills and the technology that you talked about today. But there were some things, and I think the school board member, Kimberly Garrison, brought up about handwriting for elementary kids to learn. And, but there are other factors sometimes that our elementary kids, like, I have my notes here. They're proficient in fundamental skills, like their reading, mathematics, motor, social, emotional, and excuse me, I have a cold, organizational skills. I want to make sure they're proficient in this before AI and technology becomes their teacher and not the teacher teaching them these skills, that all the students are proficient. That's what I'm trying to say.
We share that with you.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's, okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other in-person comments? Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Yep, yeah. Come on up. Almost. You won the auction.
All right, Krishna Khan from Wynwood. So I am somebody who has kind of, grown up entering adulthood around the time that AI started exploding. It is something that worries me because as somebody who has a computer science degree and has kind of like actually studied AI, I think a lot of people are kind of not necessarily understanding what it is and isn't. And so, I know that I do remember a mention of, talking about AI critical thinking. In terms of that, the amount of time that it sounds like is being spent on this, I would say seems a bit low considering how dominant it's becoming in the world. It, spitballing, and I'm just kind of processing it now, it feels like the kind of thing that might need full, much more, a full level, course curriculum, because we are in a world where AI is going to, determine a lot. It's going to be very important, whether I like that or not. And so just thinking about, can we increase how much time is being spent making sure that students actually understand what AI is, what it isn't, and also especially considering things that I've been reading repeatedly, seeing multiple news stories about students who have chatted with AI and then ended their lives. So I think it's really important to just increase how much we're raising awareness of that.
Krishna, I think we share your concerns, and are also thinking about it. One of the things we talked about in the meeting today is there's 30 states that have issued AI guidance at this point. Pennsylvania still hasn't issued guidance. So it's, as part of our presentation, as we shared at the beginning, people are figuring it out as we go, and it's not from a lack of thinking about how to do it responsibly. So we share the same concerns. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you.
Scott, I'd love to add on, just with our digital citizenship programming, we actually did a lesson last year from Common Sense Media called Who's Behind the Screen, and we educated students about AI chatbots and just delineating the difference and really talking about giving students safe tips because of those news stories that we've heard.
Great, thank you. Okay. Thank you all for that fantastic presentation, for fielding all of our various and sundry questions. Have a fantastic night. I would love to hear from our wonderful folks that are going to give us a presentation about universal design for learning. And
So just, can you make one comment?
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
So it seems like the reason why you don't have any questions from the theater, they're coming in right now because there was a glitch, so nobody could put a text.
Oh, wait,
Sorry.
hang on.
We're staying. We got
I
you.
apologize.
We got you.
We had a technology program. I want to make it known that I actually did remember to ask if we had any chat questions today. We just had a Zoom issue. So, Amy, why don't you go ahead and see what we've got?
If I can remind folks, if you're in the chat, to please include along with your name where you live in the district. I'm seeing one comment, but I don't have a location from that person yet. So I will start reading it and hope that they are putting it in soon. Okay, I'll read the one that has the location and then we'll go back. From Ayala Kanan from Marion Station. Who is the legal that is being referred to when you say that legal is reviewing student data for privacy? Is it Whistler Pearlman? Pearlstein, sorry. Okay, and then, yeah.
Yes.
The district solicitor is Whistler
Yeah,
Pearlstein.
Amy answered Whistler Pearlstein, our solicitor.
Okay, and then Talia Nissim from Ardmore. What you are saying sounds great and well thought out. I know you are stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to tech in classes and parents' resistance to it. Will there be a policy for implementing off and away and screen time guardrails during free time? As it stands right now, all of my children are coming home talking about surfing the internet when unsupervised and say it is really easy to do whatever they want. They have been on Amazon and have watched funny videos with zero supervision. How will you monitor this in each and every classroom? 2 of my children are in elementary school, and I feel it would be better for them to be offered a book versus going on iPad. Okay.
You can answer the questions as they come in too, just so, or.
As it was shared tonight, we're looking to work with policy to codify guidelines and policy to help guide the district.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to match up the locations with the names. Yair Lev of Marion, thank you for the excellent presentation and for raising this important issue. One critical point that you mentioned is that at the beginning of the year, there was an option to opt out of device use. I can tell you that I missed it, but not only me, the dozens of parents I have spoken with also missed it. None of us were aware that such a choice existed, and the common understanding is that the Chromebook and tablet programs are simply the defaults with no real alternatives. Given this lack of awareness and the growing concern about how these devices affect young students, it may make far more sense for the district to make the default an opt-out rather than an opt-in.
Sorry, are you finished with that
No.
comment? No, sorry.
Physicians across the country are now writing notes and formal prescriptions recommending reduced school screen exposure, recognizing the impact of excessive technology on attention, sleep, vision, and overall development. In addition, more and more research is showing that gamifying education where learning is tied to reward systems, it skips, and instant digital feedback can cause significant harm by reducing intrinsic motivation, shortening attention spans, and increasing dependency on stimulation. There is no clear research showing that classroom device use improves learning, yet there is mounting evidence of harm. Many districts have already taken a different path with successful models that rely on limited technology and weekly computer labs instead of constant Chromebook use. This balanced approach centered on teachers, books, and real human interaction is what many parents in our community want for their children.
Just before you continue on, I know we wanted to address that, but I just wanted to say that I think I may not have been clear when I was reading Abby's questions earlier. I wasn't inquiring about opting out of device usage, that at the beginning of the year there is permissions granted for individual programs and apps, and that was specifically what I was talking about. I know the conversation went elsewhere, and if you wanted to address opting out of a device entirely, again.
Sure. Thanks, Jair. I know you've spent a lot of time thinking and looking into this. I believe there are opt-ins on the COPA page. They are opt-ins, so we do communicate that in the beginning of the year.
Anna Shaven from Bryn Mawr, can you say more about how computers and apps enrich education in the classroom? I am not convinced, and as a parent, I'm not seeing metrics or data that support this argument. And then there's just one more I'll say as well. Michelle Vessel of Gladwin, just to clarify, are you saying no data is shared with the companies used in our apps and devices? That's...
Yes, we do not. That's one of the major parts of the vetting is that we don't share student data. The privacy. Was that Michelle's question, I believe?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, wait, there's just a thank you. Okay.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for staying, even though we didn't actually make you answer any questions. So goodbye again. Have a great night. And now we will move on to our presentation about universal design for learning. I appreciate everyone being here. I know that you've been at work all day and you have to be back here bright and early tomorrow morning.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody made me aware, apparently there's a football game tonight people were concerned about, so I'll speak fast and be mindful of the community that wants to be part of that. Welcome to the second presentation. If you want to share with the group, you can turn your microphones on. Okay, all right.
It's currently 0-0 in the first quarter.
Okay, friends, everybody take a deep breath. We're going to simmer down and we're going to focus in and hear our presentation about UDL. Thank you.
I'm excited to share the group that I'll be working with for Universal Design for Learning, our second presentation tonight. Tonight you will hear from Gwen Nardowitz, Dory Martin-Patone, Principals Chris Hall, Dr. Mike Johnson, and I'll tell you the different roles that they'll play, which I'm excited that we have a great group to work with us. On September 9th, the first CCOB of this school year, we presented our district focus areas. It was more of a broad presentation, and we foreshadowed that we're going to zero in on some of those areas. That slide that you see in front of me tonight, in front of you tonight, is the three big areas that we think about. We think about academic learning, which is what most people think about in school. I told you earlier that we are with your children as many wake hours as families are during the school day. So knowing that there's social and emotional development of kids and how to be learners and how to work with others is important. And then our constant thought about growing as an organization and our professionals learning. They're the three big areas we think about to kind of organize the way we prioritize certain things. In the academic learning, I also referenced earlier that educators like to use initials. So there's three big systems of support that we're really focused on, and it won't be a one-year thing. You can expect next year, the year after, that we're always going to work on developing these systems incrementally better every year. Tier 1 practices. Tier 1 is what all kids get, what all students get, mainly in the classroom, is universal design for learning. And that's what we're going to focus on tonight. The other two systems that are part of there are professional learning communities, which are teachers working in collaboration for a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And when we realize which kids are not learning or are learning early, we provide enrichment and intervention. And that process usually goes through our MTSS process, both academic and behavioral. So they're the big three systems. As I shared, tonight's presentation is our tier 1 practice of universal design for learning. This is not as I shared, a one-year thing. This is year 1 in being really thoughtful about how we're going to deliver and grow the capacity of teachers in universal design for learning. This slide that I drew in my spare time is actually the presenters that you're going to see tonight. The reason I shared this is one, to share that joke, and two, to also, what's really important to me in this, which I think is not a small thing, in districts all over the area, you see people that lead buildings, you see people that are special education supervisors, and then you see curriculum supervisors. And the nature of their work can be siloed, right? They have specific roles that they do in an organization. And we often see that, and we're not absolved of that. That happens to us once in a while. What I really love about this slide and this presentation and the direction that we're going, we referenced earlier curriculum and policy being connected and getting the synergy of the people in the organization rowing in the same direction. And that's the metaphor in this slide, and the people that you're presenting tonight are part of a collaborative effort that we're working in synergy between departments. That's not a simple thing if you've worked in organizations. People that do very different things for the same mission and vision as we're thinking about a strategic plan sometimes can do them in isolation. And I'm really proud that we're not. And so that's what this slide represents to me. I want to shout out two other people. It's called UDL 101 because it's what we called our presentation of the early levels of understanding universal design for learning. It's the foundational information as part of phase 1. And building leaders either led that on their own or they led that in conjunction with our curriculum and special ed supervisors. Tonight you'll hear from the people on that slide, including Dory Martin-Batone and Gwen Nardowitz. Also on that traveling tour going to buildings has been Stephanie Doyle of the Special Education Department, Drew Gingrich of Curriculum, and they've collaborated to put the UDL 101 presentation together. We worked with the IU to get training, so we've been trained. We're reading on our own and developing our capacity to build our professionals' capacity in the organization. And it's been a collaborative effort. So that's one part is UDL 101, everybody getting the same presentation that you're going to see the bulk of tonight, a portion of it. The second part to that is we have modules that people are going to work in collaborative groups. So sometimes people sit down and get it at once, a whole staff, you're sitting next to people in different disciplines, different grades, and that works in UDL 101, but it really becomes more clear when you're working with your collaborative partners. I teach, for example, if I taught bio and I'm sitting with my bio teammates that teach honors biology and we're meeting during set 4, during our collaboration that we scheduled for teachers, and they're going through these modules together and talk about them in specific areas. So for example, this is what, I'll pause for a second and let you read this. And you're going to hear more about that in the presentation. And then they will have 6 lessons that they go through throughout the year. And principals have accountability to make sure they're doing it. Here's what the accountability mechanism is. Teachers will reflect, work collaboratively. Lesson 1 is watching a video by John Spencer. Lesson 2 is learning about multiple means of engagement, which you'll hear a little bit more about that. And Schlechty's work on engagement. And so they are the sessions that they'll do. There's 4 more of them. There's 6 altogether. And they'll have a mechanism. What we're going to measure, anticipating the questions at the end of the presentation for this, what we're measuring this year is that everybody gets the training. We're getting qualitative feedback on how that training is and what more people want to learn from it. At the end of our presentation, you'll hear from 2 principals, one at the middle level, one at the high school level, that volunteered to come tonight and share what they're doing, of how they're extending UDL 101 in those modules and how they're operationalizing that with their staff in their buildings. All of our principals are doing that. It's one of their goals for the principal goals, and part of the goal structure and the goal-setting meetings that they're having with teachers in the beginning of the year. So we're measuring as we walk through, are we seeing that in classrooms? We're measuring, did everybody get the learning? We're measuring qualitative feedback from the PD sessions, and those are the things we're looking at in year one of implementation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dory and Gwen to go over the goals of the session.
I brought some hard copies for you of the UDL framework. I think it could be maybe a little bit, well, we like to have multiple means of ways to represent information. So you've got it on your screen. You've also got a hard copy. Okay, so hi, as Scott said, I'm Gwen Nardowitz. I'm a special education supervisor, and I am really excited to share key parts of the UDL 101 presentation with you this evening. Sorry, I'm going to just turn my timer on, make sure I stick to our plan. As Scott mentioned, this content has been presented by combinations of special education and curriculum supervisors in partnership with building administrators during different faculty meetings over the last year. Each presentation shared core content and also was customized for each audience to fit what they needed. The purpose of this presentation was to provide an introduction to UDL with goals expressed on the slide. Its purpose was to serve as an on-ramp to the professional learning that Scott described later this school year, and hopefully it also sparked curiosity and generated some excitement. Before proceeding further into the presentation, though, I do think it's really important to note that none of us presenting claim to be UDL experts, but we all recognize its promise. We're all in the process of learning by doing, and we're going to share some of that learning with you this evening. So where did UDL come from? CAST, which stands for the Center for Applied Special Technology, is the organization that developed the Universal Design for Learning framework. The work of David Rose and Ann Meyer and their colleagues in CAST in the 1980s was influenced by Ronald Mace, who was an architect that used the phrase universal design to describe his work on designing products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation. And I think that this cartoon really captures that spirit. There are a group of people waiting to enter the building, and a person in a wheelchair on the left asks, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the person shoveling the ramp says, or shoveling the stairs says, "All of these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. When I get through shoveling them off, then I'll clear the ramp for you." And the person in the wheelchair responds, "But if you shovel the ramp, we can all get in." The larger message of this cartoon is the UDL core concept that actually Kim mentioned earlier in the last presentation, and that Dory will talk more about later in this one, which is that what is essential for some is good for most. The overwhelming majority of the information about UDL in this presentation comes from CAST and CAST fellows like Dr. Katie Novak. The UDL framework, most recently revised last year in 2024, continues to evolve based on research and feedback from practitioners. UDL is informed by cognitive science about learning, and our brains are organized for learning in three main networks: affective, recognition, and strategic. The affective networks are summarized as the why of learning. Why do I have to learn this? And these networks deal primarily with engagement in learning. The recognition networks are summarized as the what of learning. What do I need to know or be able to do? In these networks, information is represented, and we make meaning of it. The strategic networks are summarized as the how of learning. How do I show what I've learned? In these networks, we see actions or expressions of how information has been processed. While there's a lot of variability that lights up these networks, the variability is predictable, and adults designing instruction can design for the variability that we know exists. As I said on the last slide, there's a lot of variability that exists within our affective, which is the green on the left, recognition, which is purple in the middle, and strategic, the blue on the right networks when learning. That variability can create barriers in the classroom if we're not designing for it. And those barriers can limit access. The good news, I think, is that the variability is predictable and can be broadly organized into the chart that you see on the slide. As different staff read this chart, it resonated with what they know from practice. For example, they know that students will have different interest levels and differences in their ability to read words and understand vocabulary and express their learning. So the UDL framework emerges from the patterns and trends that exist within the research about variability that we just looked at on the last slide. The framework is organized into 3 principles, which track, again, back to that affective, recognition, and strategic networks. Those principles are design multiple means of engagement, design multiple means of representation, and design multiple means of action and expression. Within those 3 principles are 9 guidelines that break the principles down into smaller parts. Those guidelines are design options for welcoming interests and identities, design options for sustaining effort and persistence, design options for emotional capacity, design options for perception, design options for language and symbols, design options for building knowledge, design options for interaction, design options for expression and communication, and design options for strategy development. And then within each of those 9 guidelines are a series of checkpoints that, again, are essentially advice, scaffolds that designers of instruction can use to help target a guideline. One of the things that I really like about the framework is that bottom horizontal row that reminds all instructional designers that we need to provide scaffolds and supports for students to develop their executive functions, because those exist at different levels across different subject areas. So we need to make those scaffolds available. We need to teach students how to use the scaffolds, and then we need to encourage their choice to access them when needed. Another aspect of the framework that really resonates with me is that the goal listed at the top is learner agency, which is students making developmentally appropriate decisions for their learning based on self-awareness, self-management, and responsible decision-making. So if we look at the principle, designing multiple means of engagement, how does somebody do that? They do it by designing options for welcoming interests, as I said before, options for sustaining effort and persistence, and design options for emotional capacity. Some of the ways that they can do that are to build in choice, clarify goals and their purpose, and promote reflection. The next principle, design multiple means of representation. Again, how does someone do that? They design different options for perception, for language and symbols, and for building knowledge. What does that look like? It looks like using, making sure that we define words, making sure that we're using pictures, charts, graphs to help represent content, that we're connecting what new learning to prior learning to help build those connections and help students to make meaning. And then looking at the principle of action and expression, again, how do we do that? Design options for interaction, design options for expression and communication, and design options for strategy development. Again, what does that look like? It looks like making use of multiple medias, technologies, and tools, again, to help students show what they know relative to what a learning target is, and to help them set goals and to monitor progress towards them. In summary, UDL is a lot of things, but at its core, at its heart, it's just a framework for instructional design. And it takes lots of complicated information and I think packages it in a way where designers of instruction, teachers can go and look at specific areas to help them problem solve. It also helps to create common language. It gives advice about scaffolds and supports to build and minimize barriers. I think UDL is done best within a PLC where there are many hands to make the really challenging work of design easier. I think it's important to note, along with what UDL is not. It's not a program, and it's not a checklist. It's not special education, and it's not one more thing. It's not the same thing as differentiation, because differentiation is about what one student needs, and UDL is about designing for all. While we're still going to differentiate, UDL is about something different than that. The way I sometimes think about UDL is somewhat of like a buffet where you've kind of curated options for your guests and you're intentional about letting them know what options are available and encouraging them to select options that work for them. I'm going to turn it over to my friend Dory, who's going to wrap up the UDL 101 portion of this presentation by sharing information about UDL's core concepts and mindset.
Thanks, Gwen. So when we go to our visits, we want to always leverage up the Tier 1 practices. And this visual kind of gives a reference point for teachers. It gives the cognitive stickiness so you can remember here's just the core concepts. Firm goals, flexible means. The GPS symbol's there to say the destination is firm. We know where we're going, but there's alternate pathways to get there. The teacher acts like the navigation system that can help students navigate barriers and provide alternate pathways. Variability is the norm. From the beginning, we acknowledge that no two students are alike. That is the norm. So our planning and instruction with UDL begins with that in mind. And we expect that backgrounds, abilities, and ways of learning are different and diverse. What is essential for some is good for most. Gwen mentioned that from the beginning. And usually if you start that way from the start, we build smarter. It's not about adding extras on because you thought through it from the beginning. Context matters. In order for our teaching strategies to be successful, we need to consider context. And that means learning doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is influenced by the environment, culture, community, and emotional climate. The UDL mindset, as we mentioned earlier, the simplicity in this, this is the other reference point when we talk about teachers and when they're in their PLCs and they want to begin to explore, how do I design a UDL lesson? Well, your goals are firm. That tells us what every student needs to know and be able to do. Clear goals make it easier for teams and PLCs to plan purposefully and to ensure we're all heading towards the same outcomes. Barriers don't live in the student, they live in the design. So that's where they think through, what might students struggle to access this? What options can we, is there only one way to show understanding? So you think through all those barriers together from the beginning. And then you can get to the options so that students can show their learning in different ways. This doesn't mean we're lowering the bar. It means giving every learner a fair shot at meeting the same high expectations. It's about choice, flexibility, and empowerment within Tier 1 core instruction. And as Gwen mentioned, the best part is no one's doing this alone. It fits naturally into our professional learning communities. It's the authentic best place for us to start this work and think through it together. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. So Gwen and Dory did a phenomenal job of talking about what UDL is in terms of an instructional design framework, and Mike and I will talk about how we've tried to actualize and deepen and extend district professional learning at the building level. So I'll talk about 3 different examples of professional learning exercises we facilitated at the building, and the first one was called Goals, Barriers, and Options. And the goal with this first exercise was to help our teachers access an understanding of what typical barriers exist in their content area classrooms, and to understand some options for how they could help minimize barriers for students. So this is a cover sheet that teachers use to get context for how to use the resource, and this 5-page resource starts on this slide. You can see the organization of it from the first page. There's engagement is one of the goals of learning. We always want students to understand the reason they're learning something and to be fully invested and motivated to lean into learning, and especially vulnerability. The second column describes 2 typical barriers to engagement, and you can see those explained on the slide. The third column unpacks some planning consideration questions teachers ought to consider when looking to minimize engagement barriers. And then the final column, that 4th column, unpacks some aligned options that teachers could lean into in terms of learning about how they can minimize barriers. So we really look to create this 5-page document to be an accessible entry point for teachers to understand how they could appreciate and understand typical barriers in the classroom, and we wanted to point them to specific options for how they could minimize barriers for students. Shout out to Christy Fruit, our coordinator of student interventions, who leans into providing professional learning on Tier 1. She took the lead in drafting this. She consulted with Gwen, the special education department, to Scott's point around breaking silos and supporting one another. And then we also tapped into Laura and Kim, who were here earlier, around really embedding hyperlinks in this around district-aligned professional learning resources that we wanted to point teachers to. And so the next page unpacks some representation barriers and considerations and options, and then action expression starts at the bottom. You see more action expression barriers. This was, again, an opportunity to help teachers understand typical barriers that exist in these categories. And then we really tried to develop the executive functioning barriers and important planning considerations and how teachers can teach and support executive functioning. So that's what the last 2 pages attempt to do around planning and prioritization, organization, time management, and task initiation and goal-directed persistence. So we asked all of our teachers to engage with this resource, thinking about a specific cohort of students that were struggling and meeting with barriers in their classroom environments, and we asked them to tell us specifically one +1 move they plan to make whether it be aligned to minimizing barriers to executive functioning for that cohort of students, or engagement or action expression or representation. So that was the goals, barriers, options exercise, which called for them to engage with this resource, and this resource continues to be a go-to for our teachers as they move forward and welcome new cohorts of students. The second professional learning exercise we facilitated was facilitated by Dr. Anna O'Rourke, one of our 2 assistant principals. She's phenomenal. We called it tight goals and flexible means. Dory talked about this, how important that is. We started out with some mindset work, and all of our teachers experienced these sessions with their PLC. As Gwen said, this work is best done by teachers that teach and plan the same courses, so they can collaborate to support one another. And so one of the ways that we got some buy-in was we watched this TED Talk together, and I don't know how many of you have seen this TED Talk, if any, but Todd Rose talks about how in the 1950s, the US Air Force used to purchase planes that had a cockpit designed for the average pilot. And when they realized that their pilots were underperforming, and so what they did was they had 4,000 pilots, and they actually measured those 4,000 pilots on 10 different measurement dimensions, things like height and things like inseam length and things like waist size. And what they realized was there were 0 pilots out of 4,000 that had the average dimensions and average measurements. So they really thought they were designing an average cockpit that would work for most, and it worked for 0. It worked for 0. Now, thankfully, the Air Force challenged the aircraft developers to develop a better cockpit, and we're all benefiting from that today. I don't know what I would do without adjustable seats, but that all came from that realization that when we design for the average consumer or the average learner, we're designing for no one. So we talked about that and the implications for education. From that professional learning session, there were 3 goals for that session. The most important are the first bullet and the third bullet. On the left-hand side, we wanted our PLCs to develop consistent learning targets for a UDL-aligned lesson. And then the third bullet there speaks to the fact that we wanted them to prove to one another and to themselves that they could design beyond a traditional assessment at least 2 and maybe even 3 different means for students to demonstrate their learning. And we provided this virtual resource binder to teachers to help ground everyone in some common language and common resources. And then we asked teachers to upload the contents in the folder, these planning artifacts, by the end of the session, the shared learning targets, the assessment options in the folder, and we also asked them to tell us when they plan to teach the lesson and administer the assessment, because we wanted to go celebrate their successes. And so teachers parked those planning resources by PLC in these PLC folders, and that gave us an opportunity as a leadership team to provide feedback to teachers and to share best practices across the building. And as I shared with you, we asked teachers to tell us when they plan to deliver these lessons and administer these assessments, because we wanted to be there to celebrate their successes and to see how things were going, and to be their champions. Finally, we asked all of our teachers, and this is some culture work we're looking to do, is just to embed and nurture a culture of constantly asking students for feedback. So you see a sample student survey that we provided to all the teachers at the end of this session, and we challenged all of them to ask kids how these newly designed learning experiences, UDL aligned, were working for them. And we wanted to hear about that too. The third and final thing I'll talk about is a summer reading professional learning exercise we provided. Typically, when we provide a summer reading exercise for staff, we prescribe it. We choose a book for them. This year, we wanted to challenge ourselves to provide choices and some options. And so Kim Phillips, who was just here earlier, designed she just up-levels everything she touches. I said to her, Kim, I want to get teachers excited about these 4 titles and have them hopefully leave excited to read one at the end of the school year over the summer. And Kim came up with this sort of blind survey inventory with these 16 descriptors that you see here, the bullet points. So they unveiled some mystery books. By the time they filled out this blind survey, they had recommended to themselves one of 4 titles. And so all 4 of these are UDL-aligned texts, and that number that you see in each column is the number of staff members that selected each text as a result of completing that survey. And so they read these 4 books over the summer, and you can see that these are nice-sized groups, which positions us to be able to have book club discussion groups around UDL topics and to have teachers share with one another what they're excited about and what they're implementing this year. And all of this ended up culminating at the end of the summer with our department chairs. We call them content leaders at the middle level because we're a little different. So our content leaders drafted sample professional growth goals, and that's what you see on these slides. These are the sample professional growth goals, and you can see most, if not all of them, are aligned really tightly to UDL, if not professional learning communities or MTSS. So these are some sample goals that staff came up with, and we're excited to see what they do moving forward. And I'll kick it over to Mike.
Thank you, Chris. So UDL at Lower Marion High School, this image was produced by ChatGPT. So going back to the original image that I believe Gwen showed during her portion of the presentation, we actually started with this image last year with our staff because I thought the image was really sticky and getting to the idea that what is essential for some is good for most, and actually collaborated with Gwen Nardowitz on this prompt that we shared with our staff to inquire as to how this concept of what is essential for some is good for most, how does that show up in your instructional design? And part of the intentionality here was to get people thinking about how they design their instruction and how some of those UDL principles are already embedded in their work, even though they may not have been trained formally in the framework. And so this gave us an opportunity to solicit feedback from staff and then to share that feedback with our department chairs and talk and think through what people were saying about how their instructional design is already influenced by some of these principles, even though people hadn't engaged as much with the content of what UDL is. So we went on a learning journey throughout portions of the year. So I just clipped here just a picture of a video series that we facilitated through our weekly updates that I send out to staff every Friday. Those weekly updates for 5 consecutive weeks contain these videos that embedded some professional learning that teachers could do on their own to learn a little bit more about what UDL is. So the definition, the guidelines, and then the engagement, representation, and action and expression. That happened over the course of 5 weeks, and then as we came towards the end of the calendar year, I facilitated a faculty podcast. I'm not going to play this for you. There was some concern over whether this was a video to play or not, but as a part of our ongoing learning, I facilitated some direct instruction in what UDL is, going through some of the 101 components for staff so that they could engage with some content to get a better idea of what the framework was about. As we came into the new year, we wanted to capitalize on what teachers already are familiar with. So John Hattie's work around some best practices for instructional design and strategies, and then obviously the Danielson framework on which the teacher evaluation process is built on. We did actually 2 activities over the course of 2 months. First with the Danielson framework, with getting teachers to think through what are some examples of ways that you engage with particular power components. So how do you engage students in learning? What are some ways that you design instruction? What are some ways that you have multiple means of understanding lessons and things like that? So we had staff engage with the Danielson framework, thinking through some examples and then making those intentional connections to the UDL framework. And similarly with the Hattie work, we looked at some of the highly effective strategies that Hattie recommends, and then had staff make some intentional UDL connections with things that we're already doing, but how do they align with the UDL framework and how do those principles fit together? That took us into the later springtime, and then our leadership team, as we started to look at how we wanted to continue to grow, our leadership team, which is our administrators and all of our department chairs, read the book. We did not give options this time around, but we did read the book UDL Now over the summer and brought that into our fall planning time. And we're going to be utilizing that book throughout the course of the year as we're designing differentiated professional development opportunities for staff. So there was a reference earlier to pop-up PDs and things like that. So we're looking at some of those frameworks throughout the year in which to provide staff some opportunity to continue to grow. And as we came into the year, we wanted to look a little more at applications. So how are we applying the things that we are learning? So as we open up our year, staff have to write growth goals that are aligned to Danielson for the purposes of their evaluations. We ask that each of those growth goals be intentionally aligned to principles of UDL. And so that as we're going in and out of classrooms, we're able to provide feedback on what people are applying to their instruction. There was a reference earlier to the Universal Design for Learning PD that we're going to be delivering, those 6 modules throughout the year. So as teachers continue to apply, we will then be in a position to provide more strategic and intentional feedback on what we're seeing in the instruction that's happening in classrooms. As we shared earlier, not experts, but learning by doing. So that opportunity for feedback and ongoing growth is going to be really important. And then we work as administrators to model that. So when we facilitate professional development, we try to avoid sit and get opportunities and PowerPoint slides and things like that, but really try to make sure that we're engaging staff in the way that we're asking staff to engage with students. I have the thank you slide, so thank you.
Are you saying we should be receiving this information in a way other than sitting here and listening to you present a slide deck at us?
Don't forget the handout.
I'm just teasing you. Thank you, that was an incredibly in-depth, very elucidating presentation, and I appreciate all that information. I will ask any of my colleagues, does anybody have questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, go ahead.
Try to go quick.
Yes, we'll be mindful of everybody's time.
I know, everybody's at Friday, including us. Okay, so I feel like we had a presentation on this at least a year ago. I think Jen Gaudioso did the presentation on UDL. I'm remembering that, but I guess my question is, for the school system, when did this really, no, it was UDL, I know the difference. When did this really start to take full, implementation, just so I can see where the framing of start is and where checkpoints are?
So the idea has been around. It's not new this year. To your point,
Anybody.
in terms of moving together on the same boat, and it's common expectation among 11 buildings, this year it has taken off with more mandated goals, including the UDL 101 session, which in part you saw tonight, and then the modules which teachers will complete in small groups this year, and lastly, it's more embedded into our goal setting with teacher set with principals this year. So more of the mandate, and we're moving in the same direction, is more this year.
Great. So I guess one of my questions is, what are the indicators that you're looking for to say Dory's looking at me like she knew this question was coming, to say what success looks like on a teacher level, on an administrative level, and on a student level? I know it's early, but are we starting to see any kind of A/B instruction in the classroom level? This class did a UDL, same typical lesson, and this class did a non-UDL, and the engagement level, the kids are talking more, they're engaging more. Are we seeing, what are those indicators that you're looking at each of the levels for all this?
Well, I think at the teacher level, one of the things that I talked about that we're certainly looking to do is assess the extent to which teachers understand the principles of UDL, and teachers are able to demonstrate through their instructional planning the core principles of UDL. So that's the reason that we've been collecting planning artifacts, things like multiple means of assessment that assess the same singular learning goal. That's really powerful to be able to share with a PLC. When I say a PLC, a content collaboration team, all the teachers that teach the Math 8 course, for example, seeing multiple means to assess the same learning goal. As Scott mentioned, we are, through the beginning of year goal setting meetings, are looking to encourage and challenge teachers to develop UDL aligned professional learning goals. We check in with them at the mid-year for a mid-year evaluation conference, and at the end of year to collect planning artifacts from them to assess the extent to which that they're able to modify their planning to be more UDL aligned. And our theory of action is that if they're able to provide multiple means of engagement, representation, and action expression. We should see more students learning at higher levels and really optimizing their potential and enjoying school, which is why the student surveys, I think, are really important too, because students will be able to tell some of the story as well about how their learning experiences have hopefully changed.
Absolutely. And so what are you thinking, like, for this first year, what are you saying, like, we would love to see X% of that at the end of the year, that the teachers are actually embedding this in, like, I can see that you can go through and say, look at the evidence, what are you expecting in that first year phase of, okay, we hit it, or we're hitting a good stride. What are you thinking that's going to be?
Yeah, I think it might differ by building. So the goals, barriers, and options planning exercise, that resource and the planning exercise, that was like about 18 months ago. So initially what we were looking for when we initially had teachers engage with that was that teachers would be able to think aloud in a really like strategic, coherent way around how they've identified barriers a cohort of students was experiencing, how they tried to remove those barriers with specific teacher actions, like specific strategies, like modifications to their planning, and then hopefully the end result being more students meeting, that cohort of students meeting with success. So that's how we were looking to assess it. Really to measure success. And I think now that we're in a position where we have lots of teachers, like Mike talked about it, like almost all the teachers in the building having like a UDL aligned professional growth goal, we'll be able to collect lots of artifacts through the evaluation process. That'll be just more evidence that like it's really being embedded into practice and becoming the norm. Just like planning for variability, as Gwen said, like just becoming the norm of like what we do and part of our culture.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be helpful to report back and say, like, we see, okay, so all the teachers have a UDL goal, that we are seeing an 80% achievement of that goal across all schools. Like, those things I think would be really helpful. These are not new practices in the field. And so measuring them and saying, how are we doing and are we tracking for success is really helpful. And then on the side note, I really do appreciate the student survey and the feedback on that. Have you ran one of those yet? And what did the kids say?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
Many.
it was like you didn't give the data, like any like funness of what did the kids say about it.
Yeah. No, we collected, and you saw a sample of a typical survey. We provided that as an exemplar for teachers for what they could create, but we allowed each teacher to personalize that to really assess and get feedback from students in their classrooms on the experience they had and the extent to which they had options, they had choices, they understood the way that the direct instruction was being provided and had multiple means to engage with it. There's been really positive feedback. My apologies for not sharing any examples of that. But
and last question, all of you were referencing, and I think with humility, like we're not UDL experts, and so I do get
Gwen's an expert.
So when are we getting? How are we getting the expert information and the expert training to? So where's that coming from?
And we've sent multiple teachers to the Montgomery County IU. Erin and Jesse are like our besties. We consult with them around any resources we develop and any professional learning we plan. Kim Phillips and Laura Huddlemeyer and Christy Fruit, our coordinator of student interventions, have been to multiple day professional learning sessions there, and we don't send everyone because someone has to be here to take care of the kids, right? And so, but they come back and they turnkey the professional learning in some of the different ways that Mike and I described.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Just to add, I know Mr. Hall was talking about each building having, it might look different in a building. So what we at the central office look for and the supervisors, we're looking to get some alignment in the schools. And to make sure that when kids are receiving certain type of instruction or the goals in one building, they're doing it across town at the other building as well. We have our professional learning focus areas on our website under curriculum, professional learning in LMSD 2526, so you could see. We really wanted to make sure that we weren't throwing a lot of new things at our teachers. We wanted to really cement the good work and the good research that we've already done and continue those things. But what we're looking for, and your points are well taken, is alignment across our district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
So following up on a few of these, I guess my mind is thinking a lot about how you're using Danielson domains 1 and 3 to support UDL and actually tie the teacher goals to student outcomes in a way that drives towards our shared goal, and specifically how we're further grouping. I've heard a lot of like, this is how the adults are liking it, or this is their PD, and also all of us know UDL isn't like revolutionary practice, it's a framework. And so my question specifically is, how are you using this PD time, these different structures, integration with Danielson, like Principal Johnson said, to hold our educators responsible for the ultimate outcomes, which is supposed to be Tier 1 instruction and MTIS with differentiation?
Well, the accountability part's built into our evaluation system, so it's a good question, and there's, between the three big systems that we're talking about, which is MTSS, PLCs, and UDL, there's a lot of change. So when we talked about measuring this year in kind of UDL 101, and to your point earlier, Dr. Saltner, is we have early adopters that were implementing this before we formalized it, right? It wasn't like we discovered it and brought it to people. We have people that are learning constantly. So our math chair is the first that told me about this, took a class on neurodiversity, loved it, loved brain science, and was kind of a leader. So I think you see that in a lot of different buildings. Our goal this year was to have exposure at a really broad level, because it's a pretty intricate thing, right? It's a mindset and goals bearers. It's something that we want to appear in their thinking all the time, as you shared, Ms. Shurek, in domains 1 and 3, and their planning. So to see what the evidence is through the goal setting process. We have 3 formal meetings with teachers at the beginning of the year. So in September, we would share the expectations. In October, we have goal setting meetings that just happened. We're interested in, where did you set your goals? What specifically do you want to learn and do? And that's individualized. And there are people that it is what they do and what they think about. And there are other people that, as you know, in working with a large organization, that go back and did what they normally did, that need to be pushed a little bit. So at the mid-year, when you're starting to meet with teachers in mid-January, they're going to see people that have varying levels. So somebody that does it every day in their practice is somebody that didn't budge that much. And that's why we put it in the evaluation system, because we value it that much. Simultaneously, though, we're talking about their PLCs, making sure they're collaborating together, making sure they're unpacking standards the same way. So there's a lot of things we're asking for teachers, and the reason I say UDL 101 this year is because we want to do it at a pace, simultaneously people are leaving the field at the higher level than they've ever left, and people aren't coming into it. So we want to do it at a healthy pace where people are learning and enjoying it and making it habitual, instead of something that we have to do right now and force down. So that's the science of leadership that we're trying to do well and manage at the right pace.
Yes, and?
Sure.
I think, yes, and teachers' responsibility to disaggregate data and use it to provide UDL best practices and MTSS is the basis for Danielson. So while I understand
the basis for
Danielson and in the evaluation system, so I understand it's the basis of what we're trying to do, and my push would be, how are we digging into the data to also drive those goals and hold our teachers accountable in a way that is double supporting both of our efforts at the same time.
So tomorrow will be, all 11 schools will have representation at Black Rock, including curriculum supervisors, special ed supervisors. Our tech specialists will be there. Peter Noonan, who was major push that we put in through the budget last year, is a PLC consultant. And he's working specifically on using data to inform instruction. So we're simultaneously growing in the PLC area. It's our 4th session tomorrow. It's got really good feedback and really good traction of us moving in the same direction and not in silos. So session 3 was primarily about that. And then tomorrow we're going to build upon that in using that data, having common assessment points and learning who's learning and not, and then gearing our resources to the right students.
Awesome. I'd love to see some of the data points from the common assessments and other formative assessments along the way, just to see how it's progressing. Thank you.
Yeah, go for it.
Just one quick clarifying question. It was mentioned that this year's focus is on measuring that all staff are trained. Is that all staff elementary through high school, or all staff middle and high school?
That's all 11 schools, yep,
Okay.
K to 12.
And then I just want to echo too, it would be nice to have some of that data, especially the student feedback that you had discussed, to see what their thoughts are on this implementation. Thanks.
I just want to say that I loved the blind date with a book, which is what they call it at a bookstore, when you have like the, I don't know if you can tell, I spend a lot of time in bookstores, but I was sitting there thinking about how great it was and how great the descriptions were and how well that would pair along these UDL lines for actual classroom activities, and that would be yet another thing we can toss to our teachers as a fun thing that kids would love to do in their classroom, somehow bundling that as a blind option for them. But I thought that was really fantastic, really informative. My brain is very full. Do we have any comments from our community that want to come forward and ask? Do we have any online comments? No? Wonderful. I think everybody knew it was really late at night and that you gave a very, very detailed presentation. So I want to say thank you to everybody. Again, we will not be having a December meeting of the curriculum committee. The next meeting will be January 12th, Monday night, 7 p.m., 2026. So I want everybody to have... So if I do not see you next Monday, which I hope to see all of your smiling faces next Monday for the regular business board meeting, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, various and sundry holidays, New Year, and then break and back at it in 2026. So have a good one. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim Garrison.